People often look at their goals as immovable mountains. They tell themselves, "I can't," before they've even taken the first step. But here's the truth. The moment you decide to approach a problem with the mindset that nothing is impossible until proven otherwise, the world begins to bend in ways you didn't expect. When someone says something can't be done, it usually means they can't imagine how to do it. That doesn't mean you can't. Our greatest innovations were born from someone refusing to accept the limitations that others believed were absolute. Stop waiting for everything to line up perfectly. It never will. Progress is built on iteration, not perfection. You take an idea, test it in the real world, learn from the failure, and try again. Every time you iterate, every time you push forward, you're sending a quiet message to the world. Watch me. People are going to doubt you. They're going to tell you your vision is unrealistic or naive. But the most powerful responses don't come from arguing, they come from execution. Start thinking in terms of first principles. Don't accept assumptions or conventional wisdom. Break the problem down to its fundamental truths and rebuild from there. When you do that, the phrase "I can't" starts to lose its credibility. Focus relentlessly on solving the core issues, even if it means trying methods no one has attempted before. If something doesn't exist yet, that doesn't mean it isn't possible. It just means it's waiting for someone bold enough to build it. Create a vision so compelling that it forces you to grow into the person capable of achieving it. The obstacles will only seem insurmountable until you begin. Once you're in motion, momentum starts to work in your favor. The doubts will fade, the path will become clearer, and one day you'll look back and realize that every time someone said you can't, they were unknowingly motivating you to find a way. It's easy to conform. It's easy to stay within the boundaries of what's already been proven, but everything meaningful, every breakthrough, every genuine advancement was made by someone who chose to abandon the safe route. So let "I can't" be the trigger that ignites your determination. Respond with action, respond with proof. Let their doubts fuel your ambition. And when the results speak for themselves, you won't need to say a word, the world will already be watching. Adopting a problem-solving mind set based on first principles means stripping away every assumption and looking at the problem as if nobody has ever tried to solve it before. Instead of letting conventional wisdom dictate what is possible, you intentionally ignore the noise and focus only on the undisputed facts. To start, you take a problem and break it down into its most basic components. You question every inherited belief and refuse to accept "that's how it's always been done" as a valid justification. This approach requires intellectual honesty and brutal clarity, because you are not allowing yourself to lean on the crutches of pre-existing models or outdated norms. You allow your mind to clear away all the cluttered narratives that people build around challenges and simply look at what's left when you remove all emotion, tradition, and complacency. Once you have identified the core components of the challenge, you begin constructing a new solution from the ground up. You don't copy and paste someone else's template. You design your own architecture. This mindset demands curiosity and an obsessive desire to improve things rather than accept them as they are. It deepens your ability to see hidden opportunities where others see dead ends. It trains your brain to focus on mechanisms and causality instead of broad generalizations. When your thinking is anchored in first principles, you stop worrying about whether anyone believes in your vision or whether it has been attempted before, and you concentrate entirely on what must be true for the idea to work. In applying this kind of thinking, you force yourself to ask questions that challenge even your own assumptions. You inspect every step of the process and analyze whether it's truly necessary. You dismantle each function down to its building blocks and rebuild it in the most efficient way possible. Instead of adopting incremental change, you pursue fundamental change. You become less interested in doing something slightly better and more obsessed with doing something profoundly different. First principles thinking doesn't just help you innovate, it completely rewires the way you see potential. It reminds you that breakthroughs happen not because someone followed the template, but because someone rejected it. Many people avoid this style of thinking because it feels uncomfortable. It exposes you to uncertainty and forces you to rely on your own intellect rather than popular consensus. But that discomfort is exactly what sharpens your mental edge. The willingness to challenge every assumption forces your brain to work harder, and that hard work produces deeper insights. Instead of focusing on surface-level symptoms, you dig until you find the root, level causes, and then you address those directly. Every time you operate like this, you strengthen your capacity to solve complex problems and open doors that no one else even bothered to examine this mind. It also demands that you embrace failure as part of the process. When you build from first principles, you are entering uncharted territory, and sometimes your initial attempts will be wrong, but instead of seeing that outcome as discouraging, you treat it as valuable feedback. You gather data, analyze it, make adjustments, and continue building. Failure becomes a critical data point that informs the next iteration. And with each iteration, the solution becomes more refined and more robust. Eventually, the problem that once looked unsolvable begins to yield to your persistence and precision. The advantage of first principles thinking is that it puts you in control of the problem instead of letting the problem dictate your options. You become a proactive designer, not a passive participant. Rather than reacting to circumstances, you shape them. You develop the confidence to take on challenges that others ignore because you know how to reduce the problem to its essentials and build a way out. This approach also makes you more resilient in the face of adversity, because you never rely on other people's opinions to determine what's possible. You create your own foundation, and that foundation becomes unshakable even when others doubt you or circumstances change. The more consistently you apply first principles, the more your thinking evolves. You begin to recognize patterns hidden beneath the surface. You develop the ability to see long-term consequences and spot inefficiencies that others overlook. You understand that innovation often begins with a single question no one else was brave enough to ask. And even when the world insists something cannot be done, you maintain your focus on the bare facts and work from those. Instead of letting the complexity intimidate you, you break it apart into manageable pieces and tackle each one with precision. By practicing this mindset over and over again, you train yourself to stay calm in the face of the unknown. You stop being paralyzed by the size of the challenge and instead keep moving forward based on the certainty of the facts. You consistently remind yourself that the biggest obstacles only seem intimidating until you take the time to analyze their true nature. And once you commit fully to solving the problem at its core, using continuous iteration and execution to prove what's possible requires a willingness to put your ideas into motion even before they are perfect. The moment you start treating action as a testing ground instead of a proof of perfection, everything begins to change. Instead of waiting for the elusive moment when everything feels absolutely ready, you engage with the reality that progress comes from repeated attempts and steady refinement. Every prototype is an opportunity to gain insight, and every version you build teaches you something that theory alone could not reveal. Iteration means turning the abstract into the tangible and learning from the gap between expectation and outcome. It means treating each failure as data that sharpens the next version and refusing to let setbacks remain final. Execution transforms ideas into reality, and iteration makes that reality increasingly aligned with the original vision. Many people hesitate to execute because they fear criticism or imperfection, but those who treat each step as a necessary experiment realize that waiting is the true enemy of progress. By acting quickly and revising frequently, you bring your ideas into contact with the real world, and the feedback you receive is far more valuable than endless speculation. You start with something small, test it, observe the results, and upgrade based on what worked and what didn't. Over time, these micro adjustments compound into dramatic advancements that look impossible to those who only saw the first attempt. This approach demands a strong bias toward action and a deep intolerance for stagnation. You stop asking, "Is it perfect?" and start asking, "What did I learn?" With every cycle, you gain clarity on what works and what fails. You learn to develop resilience and adaptability as core strengths rather than rigid perfectionism. Every iteration becomes a proof point, a small victory that builds momentum. Even if no one else sees the value in the early stages, you continue refining, not to convince others through words, but to demonstrate results through reality. The act of executing small steps consistently forces exponential progress that simply cannot be achieved by theoretical thinking alone. Some people might try to skip steps and launch something grand immediately, but those who embrace incremental iteration recognize that the path to something revolutionary is often paved with dozens or even hundreds of incremental improvements. Each improvement adds a layer of insight and makes the final product more durable, more efficient, and more aligned with actual needs. The willingness to release an imperfect version, gather feedback, and then upgrade it again and again requires humility, discipline, and confidence. Humility allows you to accept that your first version will not be flawless. Discipline keeps you consistent even when results are not flashy yet. Confidence sustains your belief that the product will eventually become extraordinary through repeated refinement. You stop trying to predict everything in advance and instead control the only thing within your power, the next execution. Constant iteration also sharpens your ability to identify patterns. You begin to notice which actions produce results and which ones don't. This makes each future cycle more efficient and minimizes wasted effort. When a mistake happens, you don't internalize it as failure. You simply adjust the process and move forward. This creates a steady flow of improvement and eliminates the paralysis that many people face when they treat every attempt as a final verdict. You know that the value of each execution lies in its ability to inform the next one, so you never stop moving. Execution becomes your feedback mechanism, your learning engine, and ultimately your proof that even the most ambitious ideas can materialize. Other people may debate or doubt, but you go out and build. With each prototype launched and each revision implemented, the world begins to shift in your favor. Possibilities that once appeared distant become tangible as you repeatedly bring them closer through effort and learning. This process builds credibility, not through persuasive speeches or hypothetical plans, but through visible results. Over time, people start to trust your actions more than their skepticism. They see that each iteration is better than the last, and that all of your effort is compounding toward something meaningful. That momentum has a psychological impact as well. When you repeatedly see progress, even in small increments, you develop a quiet certainty that anything can be improved if it is approached with patience and effort. You stop getting discouraged by imperfections and start getting energized by the opportunity to refine and optimize. You develop a mindset where no challenge feels insurmountable because you have evidence that consistent execution leads to improvement. Even when obstacles emerge, you handle them as part of the process. You look at the specific problem, design a small test to overcome it, implement that test, and observe the outcome. There is no need to panic or abandon the project because you trust the power of iteration to eventually resolve any issue. This repetitive cycle of action and feedback becomes almost automatic, and with each loop your understanding deepens. Execution also forces you to confront reality instead of hiding in theory. It forces clarity by exposing which aspects of your idea are strong and which ones need refinement. That clarity drives better decisions and helps you allocate your time and energy more wisely. You no longer waste days or weeks discussing hypothetical problems because you already have data from real-world attempts. You know precisely what to improve and how to improve it. This makes you more efficient and more effective over time. Instead of fearing criticism, you welcome it, because every piece of feedback is a clue that helps guide the next iteration. Your focus shifts from protecting your ego to improving your result. Over time, this approach builds trust in yourself and in your process. You develop proof, not through talk or speculation, but through the undeniable weight of accumulated results. Others begin to recognize this too. They stop asking if something is possible and start asking how you did it. But none of that happens without the relentless cycle of execution and iteration. The vision becomes real through hundreds of small improvements, each one driven by data and feedback derived from actual attempts. The longer you stay in motion, the more your results compound, and what originally seemed impossible gradually becomes not only achievable, but inevitable. Continuous iteration becomes a mindset, a discipline, and a form of proof that outweighs any initial doubt or external skepticism. Instead of being intimidated by imperfection, you begin to view it as the raw material for progress. You develop a rhythm of testing and building, learning and improving. Every day becomes an opportunity to push the idea one step further, and with each step, your belief intensifies because you have tangible evidence of forward movement. This repeated cycle doesn't just improve your project, it strengthens you as a thinker, a builder, and a problem solver. You become more decisive because you are used to making adjustments on the fly. You become more resilient because you are used to learning from failure rather than fearing it. And you become more visionary because the iterations reveal possibilities you couldn't see at the outset. Eventually, what began as a simple test grows into something that defies conventional expectations and proves that persistent execution is the transforming external doubt into internal motivation, begins with consciously reinterpreting every skeptical remark and every dismissive opinion as fuel for progress rather than as a signal to retreat. Instead of internalizing other people's doubts as limitations, you turn them into proof that your vision is ambitious enough to provoke resistance. When someone tells you that your idea is too bold or unrealistic, it becomes a reminder that your goals exist beyond the boundaries of conventional thinking. Every time you encounter negativity, you reframe it as evidence that you are stepping into territory where few people dare to go. This mindset allows you to convert what others intend as discouragement into a surge of determination to prove them wrong. You do not spend time trying to argue with them or gain their approval, because you understand that the real response comes not in words, but in results. Rather than being pulled into debate, you quietly commit to working even harder so that your actions render their doubt obsolete. This shift from external validation to internal motivation allows you to stay focused on the task at hand regardless of how many people dismiss the vision. You no longer depend on approval to keep moving forward because your drive now comes from a deeper place. The desire to demonstrate, through tangible achievement, that the limits others try to impose on you do not apply. To cultivate this approach, you treat every negative comment as a challenge. When someone expresses disbelief, instead of being disheartened, you let it sharpen your focus. You channel that energy into refining your ideas, strengthening your execution, and reinforcing your commitment. Each instance of doubt becomes a moment where you double down on your purpose. You train yourself to respond to discouragement not with frustration, but with enhanced persistence. Rather than letting their skepticism weaken your resolve, you let it ignite your willpower. Over time, the words "you can't" trigger an automatic response in your mind. Watch me. This reconditioning turns external resistance into internal reinforcement. The more you hear that something is impossible, the more it reinforces your determination to prove that it is not. You don't seek revenge or validation in a superficial way. You allow the skepticism to remind you why the work matters in the first place. This creates a powerful form of mental resilience because nothing outside of you can break your momentum. Even if the entire environment doubts you, you keep advancing because the criticism has been transformed into the very reason you push forward. This mindset requires emotional discipline. It is easy to take criticism personally or allow judgment to cloud your focus. But when you decide to reinterpret those external voices as a source of strength, you free yourself from the emotional weight of their negativity. Instead of reacting defensively, you redirect that emotional energy into creative drive. If someone says your timeline is unrealistic, you use that statement as motivation to refine your process and make your timeline a reality. If they mock your ideas as naive, you take that as evidence that they lack the imagination to see what you see. You remind yourself that skepticism usually comes from limited experience or fear, not from genuine knowledge of your capabilities. You realize that no one else has full visibility into your potential or into the effort you are willing to invest. Therefore, their doubt tells you more about their limits than about yours. This understanding strengthens your resolve and allows you to stay uncompromising in your pursuit. You no longer let discouragement break your stride, and each time you overcome doubt, you build more confidence in your capacity to transcend it in the future. When you begin adopting this mindset consistently, you notice that external doubt becomes an early indicator of future success. You know that great ideas often provoke disbelief before they demonstrate value. You welcome skepticism because it signals that you are stepping outside the ordinary and into the territory of true innovation. Many game-changing breakthroughs were initially dismissed as impossible or ridiculous, yet once they were executed, those same doubters had no choice but to recalibrate their beliefs. You embrace this pattern. Instead of craving applause in the early stages, you seek progress. You focus on execution, knowing that results will speak louder than debates. You let your achievements convert disbelief into respect over time. But even when respect arrives, you don't become complacent. You continue to use the memory of doubt as a reminder of how far you've come and how much further you can go. The earlier skepticism becomes a personal reference point that fuels your ongoing ambition. You repeat the cycle every time the stakes get higher. New ambitions bring new doubts, and each time you use them as fuel to push your limits further. This creates a positive feedback loop where external resistance strengthens you rather than diminishes you. This approach also helps you maintain clarity in moments of fatigue. Pursuing audacious goals can be exhausting, especially when progress is slow. In those moments, you recall the skepticism you faced at the beginning. You remember the people who laughed at your idea or dismissed your capabilities, and you let that memory reignite your motivation. You remind yourself that giving up would confirm their doubts, and persevering would nullify them. That mental contrast sharpens your focus and renews your energy. It also keeps you grounded in your purpose, because the journey is no longer just about achieving a personal milestone. It becomes about demonstrating that limitations can be shattered through disciplined effort and determination. The process of turning doubt into motivation eventually becomes automatic. Your mind begins to translate every negative input into a burst of productive energy. You no longer waste time being discouraged or offended. Instead, you immediately convert that emotional reaction into constructive action. When doubt enters, output increases. This conversion process becomes one of your most powerful internal tools because it ensures that external resistance never controls your direction. It also frees you from the need to seek approval, which allows you to remain laser focused on your mission regardless of how much noise surrounds it. To reinforce this pattern even further, you can deliberately expose yourself to challenging environments. Seek out honest feedback, even from people who may not fully believe in your vision. Listen to what they say, not to validate their skepticism, but to identify any constructive insight that can be extracted. Then use the emotional challenge of the doubt to intensify your effort. By consistently doing this, you train yourself to thrive in situations where others would lose conviction. You become more adaptable, more resilient, and more driven because the negativity no longer feels like a threat, it feels like inspiration. You recognize that the more people question your ability, the more opportunity you have to outperform their expectations. Instead of chasing easy victories, you embrace difficult goals precisely because they attract disbelief. You know that overcoming them will not only push you to grow, but will also serve as undeniable proof of what is possible. In this way, doubt becomes a strategic advantage. It highlights where others have stopped believing and signals where you can differentiate yourself. Every time you respond with relentless action, you shift the narrative. The doubters may not realize it in real time, but their skepticism is being steadily undermined by your delivery of consistent progress. You continue to build, improve, and execute, using every ounce of negativity as a catalyst for deeper focus, stronger work ethic, and greater persistence. Knowing the transformation from disbelief to undeniable reality is driven not by words, but by the unrelenting discipline of proving what they thought couldn't be done. Building a bold vision that compels relentless forward movement begins with imagining a future so compelling that it disrupts your present mindset. It is not about setting small, comfortable goals, but about crafting a vision so powerful that it makes comfort feel like stagnation. When your vision is bold enough, it becomes a gravitational force, pulling you forward even when the immediate path is unclear. It does not rely on external motivation or temporary excitement. Instead, it becomes a deeply rooted internal driver that makes complacency feel unbearable. You wake up not merely to complete tasks, but to move one step closer to a future that only exists in your imagination. This kind of vision requires courage because it demands that you look beyond what is currently possible and commit to pursuing something that others may not even believe is realistic. It asks you to see opportunity in places where other people see finality. When you commit to a bold vision, every challenge becomes part of the journey rather than a reason to stop. Obstacles that might deter others become signals that you are on the right path, because anything truly transformative will necessarily encounter resistance. You no longer look for easy wins or short-term praise. Your focus shifts entirely to the long-term outcome, and this shift changes the way you allocate your time, energy, and attention. Instead of seeking short-lived gratification, you start investing every hour, every resource, and every ounce of effort into building momentum toward this larger purpose. A bold vision also gives you clarity when external pressures threaten to distract you. The world constantly offers easier paths, safer choices, and tempting distractions. But when your vision is large enough, it becomes a filtering mechanism. It allows you to say no to anything that doesn't align with the mission. That clarity saves time and prevents dilution of effort. Even when opportunities present themselves, you evaluate them based on whether they bring you closer to the vision or not. This creates a focused and disciplined approach to execution. The vision becomes the lens through which every decision is made. This kind of focus protects your energy from being scattered and ensures that every action is building towards something cohesive and meaningful. The vision also evolves over time. As you take action and make progress, your understanding deepens and your ambition expands. You begin to see opportunities that were invisible at the beginning. You refine the vision, making it even more powerful and aligned with your values and capabilities. This constant refinement strengthens your commitment and keeps the vision fresh and motivating. It no longer feels like a fixed goal, but like a living blueprint that grows alongside your efforts. The more you move forward, the more the vision evolves, and the more it fuels your determination. Relentless forward movement comes from the recognition that achieving a bold vision is not a single leap, but a series of deliberate steps. Each step matters. You develop the discipline to keep going even when progress feels slow. You do not wait for perfect conditions or permission. You build momentum through repeated action, and that momentum becomes a powerful force in its own right. It creates a rhythm of productivity that becomes difficult to disrupt. People may not understand why you work tirelessly, but the vision gives you a level of commitment that cannot be explained through logic alone. It is driven by belief in what the future can become if you refuse to give up. When setbacks happen, you do not view them as signs that the vision is flawed, but as tests of your resolve. Each setback strengthens your resilience and deepens your understanding of what it will take to reach the goal. You stay flexible with your methods, but uncompromising with your purpose. If one approach fails, you adapt. If a door closes, you find another path. Because the vision is bold enough to demand your best, you keep elevating your standards and expanding your capacity. You measure progress not by how easy the journey feels, but by how aligned your actions are with the outcome. A bold vision also attracts talent, resources, and opportunities that smaller goals cannot. When people sense that you are pursuing something extraordinary, they become inspired. Some will want to join you, others will support you, and even those who doubt you will keep watching. The vision creates a magnetic effect because people are naturally drawn to courageous pursuits. It awakens a desire to be part of something larger than themselves. But none of that happens unless you first demonstrate your own commitment. You become the catalyst. You set the tone through your actions, your persistence, and your refusal to settle for less. When others see that you are serious, they begin to believe in the vision as well. Over time, that belief spreads, and the vision evolves from being a solitary idea into a collective mission. This collective energy amplifies the momentum and makes it even harder to stop. But even if no one joins you initially, the vision must burn brightly enough to sustain you alone. You cannot rely on external validation because in the early stages there may be none. The belief has to start with you. You keep building step by step, driven by an internal conviction that the future you envision is worth every sacrifice. As progress compounds, you witness small parts of the vision becoming reality, which increases your confidence and reinforces your dedication. Eventually, what once seemed distant begins to materialize in front of you. Having a bold vision also forces you to grow beyond your current abilities. You are compelled to develop new skills, expand your knowledge, and push through comfort zones. You actively seek out challenges because they are necessary for the vision's realization. You surround yourself with people who elevate your thinking and expose you to ideas that stretch your imagination. You cultivate habits that support long-term growth and eliminate those that drain your momentum. Every day becomes a deliberate step toward becoming the person who can fully realize the vision. Even when progress is slow or uncertain, you continue moving forward because the alternative, remaining where you are, becomes unacceptable. The vision creates a sense of urgency that propels you forward regardless of external circumstances. You stop waiting for the perfect timing, you create the timing. Whenever fear or doubt arise, you remind yourself of the future you are building and push through. The vision acts as a compass, a source of strength, and a constant reminder that the work you do today is laying the foundation for something transformative. The more deeply you internalize the vision, the less you are swayed by temporary setbacks or distractions. You stay focused, determined, and willing to endure whatever challenges arise, because turning the vision into reality becomes a responsibility you fully embrace. Others may question your pace, your methods, or your ambition, but the vision remains a constant presence that fuels your determination to keep pushing boundaries, keep experimenting, and keep pursuing what others might consider unreasonable. Over time, this relentless forward movement builds a legacy of progress, innovation, and impact, all driven by a bold vision that never lost its power to compel you forward.